So good morning and welcome to our online webinar, Using Creativity and Innovation to Solve Wicked Problems. My name is Sarah Haffenden and I'm the Marketing Communications Manager at UKZN Extended Learning, also known as UEL. So in case you're unfamiliar with UEL, we are the continuing education unit of the University of KwaZulu-Natal and we offer all the short courses on behalf of the university. So we first decided to offer these webinars as we were in full support and compliance with the directive of a national lockdown, which was issued to address the COVID-19 pandemic. So we embraced the changes and launched a number of projects aimed at providing free access to learning materials during this lockdown period. So one of these projects is our online learning webinars. So our webinars will continue throughout September and will be offered once a week on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. From October, we'll be offering webinars once a month. So please do take a look at the final slide at the end of this webinar for further details on our next webinar, or you can visit our website at www.ukznextendedlearning.com. So please note that due to the nature of this webinar, we will not be able to address raised hands and questions throughout the presentation. So please would you post all comments and questions in the Q&A box, and these will be addressed at the end of the webinar. So we'll also allow for live questions at the end. So if you have a question you'd like to ask live, you can just raise your hand and we'll open up your mic and you can ask your question live. So I'd now like to introduce you to our guest speaker for today, Professor Ziska Fields. So Professor Ziska Fields is an associate professor in the College of Business and Economics at the Department of Business Management at the University of Johannesburg. Prof. Fields is also an alumna at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and an external researcher and habilitator at the Chair of Innovation Research and Technology Management at Chemnitz University of Technology. She is an advisory board member and ambassador for the World Creativity and Innovation Week and the World Creativity and Innovation Day in South Africa, as well as some Southern African countries like Namibia and Botswana for 2021. Her main research areas and passion is theoretical and applied creativity across various disciplines and contexts. She developed 2 theoretical models to measure creativity in South Africa, focusing on youth and tertiary education. So welcome, Ziska, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And good morning to everybody that is attending this webinar. We're going to focus today on a question about problems that we are facing in our world. And I'm going to explore if creativity and innovation can actually help to solve these problems specifically. So sit back, relax, and let's start. All right, we all know about COVID-19. I mean, it has been in the news, it has affected us as well. And the fact that COVID-19 is an issue that we have to talk about and an issue that we have to deal with is the fact that it has affected the whole world. And we can actually see it when we go out, we can see it on TV. And it has been the biggest psychological experiment for mankind. And therefore, a lot of people refer to this as COVID-19 being a new normal and creating a new normal afterwards. So basically what has happened? People are being isolated, we need to wear masks, there's also social distancing. And everybody is reacting to this pandemic in a different way. But nevertheless, it is a problem. It is an issue that we need to find ways of dealing with and moving forward. The same with the 4th Industrial Revolution. Obviously, the impact is not as clear as COVID-19, but also it affects the whole world. And it's going to also affect the way we live, the work, as well as communicate. And COVID-19 actually pushed the 4th Industrial Revolution forward in terms of forcing mankind to actually reconsider the way that we live, work, and communicate. The 4th Industrial Revolution will also change government and education, healthcare, and commerce. We already saw this in terms of education, where online education and online learning and teaching is becoming more important than before. We can also see it in terms of healthcare, if you think about the impact that COVID had and how technology can now be used to actually alleviate the impact of COVID on the healthcare system. Yet all of these issues, government, education, healthcare, and the business world all have to deal with this fourth industrial revolution and the change that it's causing. The fourth industrial revolution is also going to ask from us as humans to look at what we're doing and how we are creating value, and it's also going to change our mindsets and what we are seeing as important and not so important. So you can see, just based on those two examples, COVID and the fourth industrial revolution, there is a lot of issues that we have to deal with. But that's not all. We also have to face a lot of challenges as mankind. Most of these challenges are created by ourselves. There's also the saying that we are going to actually cause our own extinction moving forward. So you can see, in terms of just other examples that is very challenging for us, is actually the population is increasing. We don't have any fossil fuels. Our wilderness is not producing what it should be producing. There's fisheries as well, and water. We don't have enough of those. So that can be a big challenge for us. Biggest problems in the world in terms of crime, there's drugs that we need to contend with, counterfeiting, human trafficking, oil, and then also wildlife crime. And as you can see, climate change is quite a big one in terms of all the devastation that it has caused and is causing today. And we can just think of the fires that has happened in the world just this year already and how it impacted. One of the biggest challenges, I personally think, is the fact that there are a lot of poor people, there are a lot of hungry people, yet if you can look at the picture at the bottom, there's a lot of us wasting food. So once again, a huge challenge that we need to deal with. Then we also have terrorism. We can see that there was the news about Mozambique, for example, where there are people causing a bit of uproar and protest actions. There's also other aspects of digital warfare that will become even more important in the fourth industrial revolution. So looking at this, it seems quite overwhelming in terms of what are we doing? What is happening? Can we actually find solutions for all these things happening around us? Yes, there is an answer. However, all the examples that I've mentioned, I like to call wicked problems. And I want to compare what is a wicked problem versus an ordinary problem for you so that you have a quite understanding of the difference. Ordinary problems is also called tamed problems. In other words, you can actually tame it, you can get an answer for it, and you can move on. But wicked problems is quite challenging. So let's compare it. So ordinary problems, for example, you can actually specify and say, this is the problem, and this is what we need to do to solve it. With wicked problems, however, to identify the exact problem is quite challenging. And you cannot really formulate what the wicked problem is specifically. The second comparison in terms of tamed or ordinary problems is you can actually tell when you've reached a solution and you solve it. With wicked problems, there's never a solution and you will never stop. And that is largely due to the impact that wicked problems have on other aspects, but we will get to that as well. The third comparison is that solutions can be objectively evaluated in terms of right and wrong. So when you look at an ordinary problem, you find an answer, you can actually say, okay, this answer is right, or this answer is wrong, and we can move forward. However, with wicked problems, it's basically a matter of judgment. There is no clear right and wrong, good and bad. So you really need to think about what is this wicked problem? And that is why it's so challenging. It's not clear, it is confusing, it impacts on a lot of things at the same time. The fourth comparison is that ordinary problems, it is possible to actually determine if a solution is working or not. But with wicked problems, there's always unexpected consequences. So it doesn't matter what you plan or how you think about it, somewhere along the line, there's going to be an impact on something that you didn't really think about. And it's also very difficult to determine if the solutions that you came up with for the wicked problems is actually effective or not. The fifth comparison is that for an ordinary problem, a solution can be tried, and if it doesn't work, you can start again. With wicked problems, every solution will have a consequence, which cannot be undone. So that means that if we implement something for wildlife crime, for example, and that leads to the extinction of a species, but we could save 2 other species, the fact that there was a extinction of a species, it can never be undone. The last 5 comparisons that's also important that we need to think about is that an ordinary problem or a tame problem has got a limited set of possible solutions. So basically, when you generate, you sit and brainstorm, you can identify 2 or 3 or 5 possible solutions. You can implement it, you can see if it works. If it doesn't work, you get rid of it, you try it in the next one, and so forth. However, with wicked problems, there's no real limit. So it's a constant search for solutions as you move along. Ordinary problems also belongs, you can actually classify them as a problem that has to do with health, a problem that has to do with animals, a problem that has to do with people, etc. But with wicked problems, you cannot really put them in a box or put them in a specific class to say that this is very important, this is what the characteristics of these problems are, and we can actually group them together. No, each problem is unique, and each problem is in such a nature that you cannot actually put them in a specific box, because whatever you do is going to impact on other boxes, so to say. And that is because ordinary problems is self-contained, while wicked problems are very intertwined. And there's often not one root cause, there can be a lot of causes, a lot of things that can actually link together that you haven't even thought about. Ordinary problems is also when you come up with an idea and you actually consider the answer, there's not a lot of discrepancy in terms of what is happening. But in terms of a wicked problem, there's a lot of discrepancy because there's many stakeholders involved. Each of these stakeholders have got a different idea of what the problem really is and what the causes are. And finally, an ordinary problem is where problem solvers are not directly liable for the outcome. But what makes a wicked problem so problematic is that whatever you come up with, you are responsible for the consequences. So based on the comparison between ordinary or tame problems versus wicked problems, we can actually see that it is quite challenging. So how do we go about solving these wicked problems, and can we really solve wicked problems? But before we move on to that, I actually want to introduce to you something called a super wicked problem as well. So a super wicked problem built on the characteristics that we explored is now taking it a step further. Now you are linking the problem to a specific time. Basically, the saying is that we as humans have got 10 years to actually try and turn around the damage that we've done on Mother Earth. If we don't do that, we will be extinct because we are intertwined with nature, and we will cause a lot of issues for the planet and for animals and every living being on this planet. Those who caused the problem must also come up with a solution. For example, humans. We caused this whole issue about the planet because we felt that we are superior beings and we can do whatever we want and we can use whatever we want without considering that at the end, you know, if you continuously withdraw money from a bank account, the bank account will actually go empty. You need to put something back, but we haven't done that. We have just taken from the planet and taken from the planet and taken from the planet until there's almost nothing to take anymore. So we caused it and we need to come up with a solution, and that is part of the super wicked problem definition. There's also the issue that who has authority in this issue is often weak or they don't exist, or they don't want to be involved. And if you look at it, governments, the different aspects that they have, America that says no, there's no climate change, we are not going to adhere to any activities to actually ensure that we as a country are safeguarding nature and the planet. So here we can see that it's very weak and there's not buy-in. And there's a lot of talk going on, but there's little action. And then finally, the irrational discounting of what is happening. And I want you to think about yourself a bit. If you hear about climate change, do you think that you need to stand up right away and do something to solve this problem, or go out and rally people to actually start doing something now? Or is it something that you say, I can see the impact of climate change. I can see the fires. I can see nature is not happy with us. I can see species are dying. However, you know, it's very difficult for me as an individual to now do something about it. And there's a lot of individuals on this earth thinking the same way. No, government will help. Government will do something about it. People with NGOs, they will come and they will actually fix the problem. Scientists will create something using the fourth industrial technology to just, how can I say, it's almost like a little fairy. Just say, zim, zam, zula, boom, and there we go, and everything is fixed. I don't know where I got that, zim, zam, bula, but anyway, you get the feeling in terms of what I'm actually trying to say. So now, this wicked problem, we can see, you know, it's very, very, very difficult to solve. But I want to say today that there are ways to think about solutions. And I want to be honest with you as well today. I don't want to set you up for failure or tell you that there is a solution for wicked problems, because there's not. Even my ideas in terms of how we can solve wicked problems is just an idea or way of how we can actually tackle it. However, wicked problems remain wicked and remain untamable, and it's also something that we need to think about in terms of going forward, that it is hard to solve, but we can find ways of dealing and managing it so that we can make a positive impact in terms of the complexity and the intertwinedness of these problems. One thing that we need to realize, and that is part of the ideas that I want to tell you today, is that going forward, solving wicked problems, we cannot use what exists today already. And that includes strategies, models, systems. We need to think of different ways of doing things. We need to change our whole mindset. So the reason for changing the mindset is because we cannot anticipate what is going to happen and the consequences of if we generate possible solutions for a wicked problem. However, when we look at new mindsets, new thinking, collaboration, and challenging the status quo, we can actually move forward and we can find possible solutions to how we can deal with a wicked problem. As I mentioned, solving a wicked problem is almost impossible. One way of doing this, and it's not because I love creativity, is that creativity is often the key when we have to deal with complexity. And I would also say when we deal with wicked problems, creativity can often help us to think about the problem. So to be creative actually relies on your intelligence as well as your imagination. And those are cognitive things happening in us as humans. All of us has got intelligence. All of us has got an imagination. And all of us have the ability to be creative. It is a matter of actually tapping into those elements to come up with better answers and solutions in terms of what we're doing. So, in terms of problem solving, in terms of wicked problems, creativity is basically a way to deal with problems. It helps us to come up with original thinking. new thinking, new mindsets. And as I mentioned in the previous slides, standardized testing, models that we've been using before, it will not work for wicked problems. We can try it, but I can guarantee you it will not help us much. Also, part of creative thinking is the fact of fluency, coming up with a lot of different ideas. Flexibility and lateral thinking, actually adjust as we go about. We can change, mix it up, and actually think of new things, where the originality comes in as well. And there's also the elaboration of what is happening in our imagination, and we're making it appear in the form of innovation. So basically, creativity for me is not creating something out of nothing. Creativity is where we actually copy something, we transform that something, and we make combinations that doesn't exist or we don't find that often. And by doing that, we can actually think of the consequences that might happen in future. And that is why creativity, I think, is the answer to looking at possible ways of dealing with wicked problems. In addition to that, there are different skills that I think is very important. That's part of creativity. When I talk about creativity, it includes 3 elements. First of all, whole brain creativity. For me, creativity is not really true creativity if you cannot use your whole brain and use the full abundance of what is happening in your brain, from imagination to creation to critical discussion and to implementation. So the whole brain, each quadrant of your brain needs to work together, and we will look at that as well in the next slide. Then there's also the issue of creative intelligence. We often focus on intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, and so forth, even spiritual intelligence, but there's also the element of creative intelligence, and we will explore that as well. And we need to develop this creative intelligence more. We need to understand what it is, and we need to start applying it to wicked problems. And then for me, but that's just a personal opinion, is that you cannot really achieve much. You cannot really solve a wicked problem if you try to do it by yourself. You need the minds of other people. You need the experiences of other people. You need to collaborate with other people so that you can work together as a collective to create answers for the wicked problems. And then you can see the diagram at the bottom, where I suggest that if you think about wicked problems, it always starts with the individual. Then it will move to the collective and the different stakeholders that is part of this process. And then there's also the problem-solving strategy, technique, process that you need to incorporate, and also think about what is currently being developed and incorporate that into the problem-solving process. And then finally, you can see that we get ordinary creativity, we get stretch creativity, and we get beyond the creativity, and it is basically separated by the fear zone. We should not fear anymore. We should take our intelligence, take our creativity, start stretching it, and start moving beyond the acquired levels of creativity, beyond what we are able to do. And this beyond the creativity was developed by Dr. Kobus Neethling. And the fact that it's beyond the creativity speaks to the fact that we're exploring wicked problems where ordinary creativity won't work, but beyond the creativity can add real value. Okay, so coming back to the elements in the previous slide, whole brain creativity, why is that important? First of all, if we have a wicked problem, you need to apply some analytical intelligence. Yes, we won't be able to determine exactly what the problem is, but we can actually find a way of looking at the problem. So often, you have to look at it from different perspectives to come up with something to solve or something to find an answer with. But as I mentioned, wicked problems cannot be solved, but it does help to look at the problem and see if we can actually do something. Then, if we have identified the problem and we kind of identified the different aspects of the problem, we now need to look at our imagination. Very importantly is that we need to look forward into the future. We need to visualize. We need to think about what can be done. What will the future look like? And this specific problem that we have, this wicked problem, how will this look in future if we don't find something to manage it with? And what will it look like if we try and find solutions or try and find a way to deal with it and we implement what we are trying to do? How will that maybe impact into the future? What will it look like? Then we need to apply some relational intelligence, and that is where the collaboration, the stakeholders comes in as a very important part in terms of solving wicked problems. Because here it is about connecting with one another, realizing that whatever I do have an effect on others. But I want to take this a step further. This relational intelligence should not only be for humans. We should also look at ourselves from this relational intelligence in terms of the impact and the link that we have with the planet and all the living beings that is part of this planet. I don't know if you watched the movie My Octopus Teacher. It is currently showing on Netflix. I would like to recommend that you watch it. And for me, this relational intelligence actually makes a lot of sense when you watch this specific film. And we can actually see that we are intertwined with the planet. It basically broke my heart watching that movie because it touched me so deeply, showing that emotions, the relationship, the connections that we have goes much deeper than we as humans normally think. But sometimes it's good to just stand still and think about what is the impact that we are making on others and on other things that's part of the world we live in. And then finally, when you've considered your imagination, the relationship, the impact on others and other beings, then you can actually think about your operational intelligence, where you start planning and organizing. Okay, so if we need to look at our brain, analytical intelligence and operational intelligence is part of our left brain. And artistic intelligence and relational intelligence is part of our right brain. So you can see that both our right brain and left brain is actually used to actually deal with wicked problems. Now, creative intelligence. So what is that basically? And I would say it's a whole combination of different things. So it's a combination of creativity, it's a combination of innovation, it's a combination of intuition, it's a combination of intellectual curiosity, for example. So it is our ability, and now think about wicked problems, okay? So it's our ability to deal with new and unusual situations. So a wicked problem often is unusual, and it's also going to create unusual consequences. But to understand this situation or understand this wicked problem, we need to draw on our existing knowledge and our existing skills, and we need to combine our intellect as well as our imagination so that we can look at how can we manage a wicked problem and how can we actually come up with ideas of improving the situation caused by this wicked problem. So creativity is the highest form of intelligence for me, and you can also read about it as well in textbooks, and therefore creative intelligence is very important because it goes beyond just knowledge. All right, and for wicked problems, we need to go beyond knowledge. We need to go beyond what is already created. We need to step into a zone that's unknown, and we need to challenge ourselves and imagine how this world will look like. Then, as I mentioned, collective creativity. You cannot solve problems on your own. So you need your individual creative skills. You need a team, and you need to work in an organizational kind of format. And very, very importantly for me, when I talk about collective creativity, it is not getting all the people with the same thinking, same way of doing things together and saying, there's a wicked problem, solve. No, you need to get as diverse views, education, backgrounds, experience levels together in one room, appreciate the diversity that each one brings, and that collaboration and contribution need to lead to new forms of innovation. In other words, it cannot remain a creative idea or something that is created by your creative intelligence. It needs to go forward. You need to do something with it. So you need to take action. And that is where we talk about the collective, where individuals has got a common goal, and they also conduct experiments. They test prototypes together to actually ensure that whatever is created can be innovated, practical, and can create value in terms of solving wicked problems. Okay, coming back to that diagram at the bottom that I've highlighted. So everything for me starts with the individual. Your creative intelligence as an individual. What is it? Do you understand it? And are you developing it? Then you as an individual need to have creative thinking skills. You need to know what these skills are, and you need to try and develop it as much as possible. Especially in the next decade, where the World Economic Forum states and stresses that creativity is one of the core skills of the 10 most important skills that we need to actually find work and to be a productive citizen in the world. We also need to be motivated to be creative. Nobody can come and tell us, be creative. It needs to come from within. You need to understand that it is important. You need to also have the confidence to use it. And that's the next element, creative self-efficacy. The more you try to be creative, the more you learn about creativity, the more you apply creativity, the greater your self-efficacy will become in terms of growth. You also need to have a creative mindfulness. Mindfulness is important because you need to be able to understand the impact of different things on each other. And how can you actually develop your creativity in a mindful way? And then you also need to be able to look forward to creative collaboration. Now I know that there are introverts and there are extroverts. Introverts doesn't really want to collaborate. And then you have got extroverts that likes to collaborate, but sometimes they need the insights of introverts to actually create solutions. So those are the elements that you as an individual need to bring to the party to actually come up with possible ways of managing a wicked problem. So we need to become creative beings. We need to be in our core. We need to have creativity. We need to know it, and we need to recognize what it is. We need to be effective. What shapes creativity into what is valuable and useful? So once again, it's about the heart, our hearts as individuals. What are we going to do with this creativity, this awesome power that we have? And then we need to ensure that transformation happens. We need to put the effort in. We need to collaborate. We need to have the skills. We need to ensure that our ideas are being brought forward. So if we can summarize it, we need to be open. We need to be curious. We need to be original. We need to be mindful. We need to be playful. We need to be optimistic. We need to be deliberate. We need to have a purpose, and we need to be driven by the purpose, and we need to be courageous. All these elements important for an individual. Then coming together as a group, the terms of engagement is that there's no biases. We are all there to appreciate each individual's unique creative intelligence and the creativity that they are bringing to the table. Okay, so collective creative diversity is paramount when we are thinking about wicked problems. We all need to have a specific collective vision of what we want to achieve. We need to bring all our creative intelligences together so that we can say that we form a collective creative intelligence in this group. We also need to bring all our thinking skills, all our creative thinking skills together. We also need to realize that there must be an exchange process that happens. So communication is very important, and we need to share. And especially when we talk about sharing, we need to go beyond just the obvious. So with wicked problems, we cannot just focus on science to solve this. We need to bring art in. We need to bring healthcare in. We need to bring engineering in. We need to bring business in. And that is where the multiple disciplinary knowledge is very important. And then not to forget, there are a lot of technologies out there that we can utilize. So we need to find collaborative technology that can help us to collaborate better. When we think about the context in which all this happens, we need to be aware of the following, especially if you start collaborating with other people. In this looking for answers or looking for ways to manage a specific wicked problem, we need to know that there's a lot of unknowns, cause and effect relationships. So it's very difficult to predict with certainty. So you need to be able to identify with this aspect that if you really want a solution, this is not the time to have that. You need to look deeper. You need to consider more things than usual to think about solving or managing a wicked problem. You also need to think of multiple challenges that can happen. So you need as a group to probe, to sense, to respond, to communicate, to test, all these things. Because the solutions is not easy to recognize. However, as a collaborative, you can actually discover it, especially if there's an interdisciplinary and a transdisciplinary expert pool or practitioners that you can use, and they can come up with ways of looking at solutions. You also need to be able to adapt whatever you are looking for, because the outcomes might be unforeseen. So if you try to manage a specific element of this wicked problems and it's not working out, you basically need to know before you implement it that some unforeseen things are going to happen, and you need to be able to adapt quickly. You also need to be able in this group to be very protective and to conduct safe fail experiments. So you need to be able to think about ways of protecting people, appreciating them, and not breaking them down in the process, because there's going to be people that is going to disagree with you, and there's going to be a pool of people that think totally different than you and some other groups in this collaborative group are thinking. But somehow, somewhere, because of your different views, there is a middle ground where you can come together and use all these differences to actually come up with something that can actually be helpful to solving wicked problems or managing wicked problems. I keep on saying solving, but we cannot really solve wicked problems, but managing wicked problems. And then key to all this is that we need to understand each stakeholder in the process. We cannot leave out stakeholders. So you need to understand them. You need to know how they will adapt to the interventions that you're planning. You need to practice adaptive management, etc. Okay, so build on that is this collective problem-solving process that I just want to highlight for you is something that was created from using different information and tools. But to come up with collective problem-solving, there's basically 4 important actions. The first action is basically understanding. And once again, a wicked problem is very difficult to understand, but we can try and fact find, we can start creative questioning, we can start the process of trying to understand what this wicked problem is about. Then the next step will be ideation. So now if you find elements that you need to look for, you need to start looking at ideas, and you need to look at it from different perspectives, different angles, different mindsets, different diverse people with different backgrounds need to be part of this idea finding. The third step will be your analysis. So now you will identify what is the best kind of ideas that you can use to help manage this problem solve this wicked problems. And then obviously you need to take a direction, because we want something to lead to something that can be done. It mustn't just be something on paper, but it must lead to something that creates value, and that is where innovation comes in. Okay, so what I did for each of these 4 collaborative actions is that everything must have an input, there must be a process around it, and then there must be an output that will lead to the following, to the next step. So looking at understanding, for example, your input will be your different challenges. What is happening? Why is it happening? What is the different scenarios, and so forth. The process will be to try and examine the details of it in the group, trying to make sense out of what this wicked problem is all about and how it impacts on the different aspects and the different stakeholders that can make sense from that. And then your output can be that the challenge is defined in a way. Okay, so you need to come out with some sort of way of taking the effort that you want to manage a wicked problem forward into how can we now generate some ideas for whatever is causing this wicked problem. So your second action will now be that the clearly defined challenge is there. Once again, wicked problem doesn't have a clearly defined challenge, but we can create challenges. We can look at the future and we can say these might be challenges in the future. And then we start generating as much ideas as possible in the collaborative group. And the output of that will be all the ideas generated within this collaborative group. Then our third will be the impact will now be all, the input will be all these ideas. The process will now be to start sorting it, selecting it, screening it. And the output of your third action will then be the best ideas that you think can help to manage a wicked problem. And then your final action, the input there will be the best ideas, but now the process will be to find the most workable solution, keeping in mind that that solution will have unknown consequences. So you need to also think about that. And your output will now be to verify it and actually put it into action, to come up with an innovation that can help to manage this wicked problem. Very importantly, when we talk about a group and thinking about a collective creativity, we need to start off with the ability to generate ideas through discourse and debate. So that's the creative aberration, where communication is critical. Everyone needs to share. Nobody needs to sit there and say, oh, I'm too shy to say something, or oh, I disagree, but I would rather not say anything. Everyone part of this collective group needs to be able to share and debate in a safe environment. Then there's the creative agility, where we need to test and experiment. We need to reflect. We need to make some adjustments. Obviously, different people, different ideas might be very challenging, but that is why the process is there, so that we can experiment and test from different perspectives. We can reflect from different perspectives. We can make adjustments from different perspectives. And then the creative resolution is basically where we make an integrative decision as a collective by combining different things. And the creative resolution might not solve a wicked problem because it's very complex and difficult to solve a wicked problem, but it can help in terms of trying to manage it and being the first step towards finding ways of coping with this idea. Very importantly, when we talk about problems and wicked problems, we need to feed forward. Feeding forward means we cannot just work on feedback of what has happened, etc. We really need to look at the future. We really need to look at what is the unpredictability of the future. What are the elements that we're not thinking about that we should be thinking about? So it's feed forward instead of feedback that plays a role in managing collective creativity. So in a nutshell, this is how we basically look at ideas. So we have the problem, it can be a wicked problem. We convert that problem into an innovation challenge or in a creative challenge. We basically work with people to come up with solutions. We collaborate to generate ideas. We combine and evaluate ideas. We develop the ideas. And then finally, we implement ideas. But our ideas for wicked problems need to look at all aspects as well as our link between all the other elements of the planet. Okay, my recommendations, therefore, coming back to the future of creativity and innovation, is that the fourth industrial revolution technology is not there to ignore in this process. Artificial intelligence plays a key role in our efforts to solve wicked problems. And here it is about asking good questions so that the artificial intelligence, the data that it produces, can actually come up with good answers. Also very important is that we need to realize that there are different intelligences, and I would say not only human and artificial, but when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, those are basically the two, but there are also other types of intelligences that we don't even know about that is part of the world we live in. It's also very important that we ask about to whom is it beneficial? So if we look at solutions, we need to look at a wider range of solving a wicked problems. It cannot just work for humans. It must work for more than just humans. Then there's also certain technology that we can use to help solve problems. For example, there's different approaches, there's different tools. Social media applications can be used to actually elaborate and create. And there's an open source collaboration system program that you can use called Miro, where you can actually brainstorm virtually by creating a diagram that everyone can contribute and actually come up with solutions or ideas to actually solve a specific problem. And everything relies on our need to do something that's different. And we need to incorporate everything around us to find good ways. Just for example, in terms of technology, there's an app called Creative Problem Solving. And that app actually explains the process of creative problem solving and the steps. So you can access that app, you can go through it, and it actually helps you to think through everything. In problem solving approaches and tools, I still think we don't have enough of that. And it's very important that we think about the tools that we have and that it must be automated, virtually available, and that it should be linked to social applications so that we can be encouraged to share ideas. So it's not only a world for extroverts that share easily, but even introverts can use these tools to share their ideas and thoughts. And then to end off, just imagine what creativity and innovation can achieve if we think about things in a different way and with a different mindset. Linked to that we actually utilize the technology, which is developing at an astronomical speed. How can we utilize that? Will that be able to actually solve wicked problems? Because that is what we want. Managing it, yes, it's all good and well. Solving it is another story, but we need to find ways of overcoming these challenges and really come up with things that hasn't been created before, but that can lead to positive consequences for all of us. All right, so that is me for today. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. If you want to find out more about this webinar or any training programs or any other webinars, you can contact the people on the screen. And then I'm also happy to also tell you that next week, I will also have a webinar with the focus of creativity is a new power, looking at creativity as something new that we need to think about and implement. So I hope you enjoyed it, and have a good day. Sarah?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, Prof.
That's a pleasure.
If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to type these in the Q&A box, or you're welcome to raise your hand and you can ask your question live. Prof, I know you had some polls. Do you want to do them now to test who's been listening?
Yes, I think it will be a good discussion point if we can do those two polls, just to see how the people actually experience and what they think about it. So the first poll is, what is a wicked problem? Okay, so a wicked problem is, and there you have the 4 options. If you can just be part of the poll and identify the option that you prefer out of the 4, it will be good to see what you are, how do you see a wicked problem? I see at the bottom, host and panelists cannot vote. Sarah, can you just open the panel for us?
Everyone is voting. We've got about 38% of voted.
Maybe I cannot.
Yeah.
I cannot vote. See, I cannot impact on this poll. So no, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
We have about just under 60% have voted. Okay, 65, okay. It's jumping. So maybe we'll do the 10-second countdown and we can reveal the answers.
So what is a wicked problem? Why is it so wicked?
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we had 76% voted.
Thank you for the votes. Based on the answers, no, it is not all the above, although it seems like it. It is actually 3. It's multi-causal, interconnected, and cannot be truly solved. That is the correct answer. I tried to kind of catch you out a bit. So if you look at it, you can say, but why? The first one is not the right answer. It's difficult to solve, even if you're an expert. That is not the only reason why it is a wicked problem. It's part of it, but not the full answer. Then the second one, weird, evil, and wonderful at the same time. No, that is just coming from Alice in Wonderland, that everything is weird and wonderful. So not really, although you can say that it's weird, you know, problems that needs to be imagined and so forth, but that's not the right answer. So the whole thing is that it is interconnected. Everything is linked and intertwined, and it cannot be truly solved at this point in time. So therefore, the idea that maybe we can look at creativity and innovation to come up with an answer. All right, so that was a bit tricky, but nevertheless, well done. So there's another poll that I also would like you to participate in, just to look at collective creativity. So there the question is, or the statement is, collective creativity can lead to better problem-solving ideas and innovation. And there you need to say not really, or yes and no, or all the above. So look at it very carefully when you answer.
So you have a few more seconds to vote, but still do type in your questions or raise your hand. We do have a few comments coming in, and I see there is a question, so we will address that as soon as we've completed the poll. It's about 33% have voted, 38. So we'll give you another 10 seconds. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 76 voted, must be the same 76%.
Where's the other 25? So I can see that you've learned from the first poll, and yes, indeed, the 72% is correct. So when we talk about collective creativity, it can lead to better problem-solving ideas and innovation. Yes, it can, due to the fact that it used diversity of the collaboration, lots of people with different ideas, and it actually combines all the creative intelligences of the people involved. So definitely yes. So the answer, the 72%, 23 of you guys were 100% right. The other one, the yes and no, because it depends on the quality of the collaborative activities. Yes, it can also be important, but it doesn't necessarily help with problem-solving ideas and innovation. You will really need the diversity and the creative intelligence to actually solve or come up with better solutions and to innovate. Okay, so I hope that made sense. Thank you very much for those who voted. Okay,
great.
2 questions. Santosh, he asked that can dogma and cognitive dissonance be a major constraint? And yes, it can. Especially different cultures have different ways of thinking about things. Different religious beliefs has got different ways of thinking about it. That can be a constraint. However, it can also be beneficial because it actually forces people that's not part of that specific way of thinking to look at things from a different perspective. We all have, each one of us is unique. Each one can bring something to the process of solving or managing a wicked problem. And we need to use what we have. So yes, it can be a constraint if it's not utilized to find answers and to actually get people to think a bit different about things. But yeah, it's about how you use that dogma and dissonance in the process. That's my answer to that. I hope it helps, Santosh. And then Kanyisili, can I have a PDF? Yes, the PDF will be available and you are free to get it from the website of UEL's website.
I just want to launch the quick poll just to rate in the background while we're just answering some questions. But you can carry on.
I also have a question here from Avatunde. I hope I pronounced it correctly, and sorry if I didn't. But can we regard COVID-19 as a wicked problem now? Yes, I would say yes, because we don't have a solution for it. And it impacts on different ways on different people. There's a lot of unexpected consequences, unexpected elements of this COVID-19 that is impacting. So maybe in the end, we will find the answers to this, but currently it is still being explored. There's not a real answer. And as I mentioned to you, this elements of impacting and the unknown consequences, it's still there. So for now, I would say COVID-19 is definitely a wicked problem. And it will be very difficult to manage going forward. And it will create a new normal, as we know. And this new normal, we can even say, can also create a wicked problem because we don't know what this new normal is all about. I hope that helped, Avatunde.
Okay, and then just some comments that we have coming through. Debbie says this is a great slide, and she's referring to the one with the brain. Susan says, excellent webinar. Thank you, Prof. Great insights. Debbie also says, thank you, interesting. And Kanya Sile says, thank you, dearest.
Okay, thanks for being here and being part of this process.
And I'm just going to end this final poll. So thank you to those who did participate. Just a few more comments have just come through. Shannon says, very insightful, thanks. And it's an email address, Adenia. Thank you very much for an interesting and stimulating webinar. Awatunde says, thanks, it does, and thanks for your time, very interesting and insightful. Lance says, thoroughly interesting. Colleen says, please can I ask Prof to speak to the PhD students of the College of Health Sciences? So I'll probably share your details there.
All right. Okay. No, that's perfect.
Yeah, Simon says, great presentation, Prof, and very insightful.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for all the positive feedback. We're glad that you enjoyed the session. Thank you, Prof, also for sharing with us today and helping us to understand the complexity of wicked problems, and that by tapping into our creativity and collaborating on possible solutions, that we can effectively manage these wicked problems. I'm still getting in comments.
Okay.
Is eye-opening and insightful. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'll if you have any other questions or if you want to say anything else, we can always forward that on to Prof. When we do send out the mailer this afternoon, there is an opportunity to provide feedback. If you have anything you want to share with Prof or you have any more questions, you can type it in there. So thank you, Prof, again, and thank you to all our attendees for joining us today and obviously engaging with us in the webinars. We like getting feedback from you to see we're on the right track. So as we did mention, the video and the slides will be available on the UL website, and we'll send out this direct link once it's ready. We'll also send out a link to the PDF on the mailer that you received this afternoon. So do take note of our upcoming webinar next week, where Prof will be joining us again, talking about creativity as a new power. Yeah, so otherwise, thank you for joining us. We're glad you enjoyed the session. Stay safe and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a safe day and look after yourselves. It was an honor sharing a few minutes with you. Bye-bye.